Welcome to the DoneJS contributors meeting for December 16th, 2016. Let's run through the core contributors statuses for this week. Let's start on the left with, actually, I'll start with myself and we'll go alphabetical. So this past week, we had our CanJS 3 announcement on Tuesday. Woohoo! So I've been working a lot to help promote it, reaching out to writers of various publications to try and get coverage for our new releases, and kind of doing some other promotional work on top of that. And then other than that, just minor doc changes here and there based on the usability feedback that we got last week. And that's what I'll continue to be doing next week, promotion hopefully for Steel 1 as well, and then trying to execute on some of the other usability stuff that came up last week. So that's my status. David, do you have anything for us?
Not too much. We made another 2.3 release, Kevin and I, last week. Yeah, I think that's it. We're going to be upgrading another client project on to 3.0, so we'll see how that goes.
Sweet, that's awesome. Okay, Julian.
So yeah, I did this week. I changed some code for Steel Transpile. Nothing important. So now we are using Bubble and using the Bubble transform built-in methods for transpiling into AMD or CommonJS. And I'm also planning some videos for Steel, working with Steel for beginners. It's a video for or in German for the first time. Maybe we can translate that into English, but for the first time and for my own draft, I will do it in German. And I have next week. I have time to do that. So maybe I have next time something to show, or maybe something on my own YouTube channel. So it's not for Steel websites, it's only for me and somebody who wants to know it.
That's awesome. Yeah, sorry, I just want to say that's awesome, Julian. If you need another German speaker, there is another German speaker on the contributors team.
Yeah, I know David is also. So he can translate that into English, so we can share.
Or if you ever need like a second person in the videos, which sometimes the second voice makes it more interesting.
Yeah, of
awesome
course. Maybe I talked to Adam, and maybe he has a draft for videos. So I begin with very basic Steel stuff. So it's not that deep dive into. Maybe for another video, I go a little bit deeper into Steel condition and all the stuff, maybe. Yeah, let's look how it goes.
Yeah, that's really cool, and we'll definitely promote it on Twitter and however else we can.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Okay, Justin, you want to go?
Yep. So last week, this week again, has been like reviews for me at Toby, so I haven't been able to do as much. I fixed some minor stuff. Because I'm working on some example apps, I'm fixing some of the DoneJS related things, trying to remove error messages that don't make sense. And I just fixed a bug with extending can maps. Next week, it'll really be DoneJS 1.0 and hopefully finishing and starting to polish the Bitcentive app and all of the other example apps with what will be DoneJS 1.0. So next week I should have more tangible things to talk about.
Sweet. All right, Kevin, want to go?
Yep. So this week I've been working on CAN 3.3.0, which should be released this afternoon or maybe on Monday. So the idea of this was to make it more stable for us to be able to push out frequent updates. So we created CAN namespace, which is a module that all of the other CAN things can register themselves into. And then did some work to separate out things that you should only have one of in your app, like you should only have one CAN types. And those things can check if there's already another version in the namespace and throw an error if there is. So that was the bulk of it, and then that caused some issues for a few people because there was a few modules that were published with an old version of a couple of these things that there can only be one of. So those things have been fixed, and we deprecated those broken ones. So hopefully everything is working now, and this should make it more stable and easier for us to push out changes in the future. And like Justin said, next week I will also be working on DoneJS 1.0. Hopefully make some good progress on that.
I think we should talk about exactly how we made it work for a topic at the end, because I think it's really, it feels crazy, but it's interesting, at least to me.
How we made what work?
Well, we'll do it as a topic. How we made like
Okay,
CAN namespace and our plans for that. It's like a really, I don't know.
Gotcha.
It's like so crazy it might work, kind of thing.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. Matthew, want to go?
Yeah, sure. Long and short of it, release still 1.0 to the NPMs and all the packages. There was a lot of them. Yeah, there was Jillian, you'll like this. There was an interesting bug that Kyle found, not related to still 1.0, that had to do with the like how we detect require statements. You know, module detection is a big thing that you like. So one thing Steel does is it can detect comments. So like if you comment out a require, like we won't try to load that. And there was a bug where if you're using a regex, it looks like a comment because there's 2 slashes. So I had to fix the detection. And there's a really nasty regular expression which detects comments that I had to update, and I was really scared to do that, but I did it anyways. And it works now. So, yeah, still 1.0 is up.
Yeah, congrats.
Good job, Matthew.
All right, I think that's all of the core contributors' statuses. Let's move on to topics. We have a bunch in the forum post, so I'm thinking we'll probably go out of order, and it's probably best for us to start with the DoneJS 1, anything related to DoneJS 1.
Before we go into the prescribed topics, does anybody here like have a status or something that they want to share?
Yeah, I do. So Ilya and I worked on Steel Socket.io some more because we have the feature that works with, or for, especially for tests. So if you're going to fixturize your Socket.io connections, we added a lot more of the API methods and attributes to more than likely make that work on pretty much any app. And we used that for the new Feathers authentication stuff. And that's the next topic is CAN Connect Feathers. I updated that to work with the newest version of Feathers authentication that was hot off the press this week. And I'm just going to set it up so that the old version of CAN Connect Feathers that doesn't use CAN Connect behaviors, it's going to be compatible with everything before the 1.0 release. And the behavior version of CAN Connect Feathers is only going to be compatible with the new version of Feathers authentication. Is how it is right now. So that's my update.
Cool. Did anyone else have something they wanted to bring up before we move on to topics? Cool. Okay. Justin, what do you think? Talk about DoneJS 1 related stuff first, and then we can move on to some of the other topics like the SSR, the enumerable behavior.
So I guess my feelings for DoneJS 1.0 right now are mostly like if if we had to just pick one feature to do or one kind of bigger change to make, my preference would be install times. And then we don't do anything else for DoneJS 1.0, including the generator stuff. We put that in a 1.1 or a DoneJS 2.0 even. But I guess my preference, right as it is right now, is I would rather, especially because a lot of people on Gitter are asking about DoneJS kind of support, is to make as fast of a line towards DoneJS 1.0 with CanJS 3.0 and Steel 1.0 as fast as we can, like a beeline there, and maybe remove some generators or things that will speed up the initial install time. But that's but I would limit it to that. I don't know if any is.
I totally agree with you.
Yep.
Okay. So let's do that. We'll try to be, focused on that as much as we can.
So the first goal is to make it work with Steel 1.0 and CanJS 3.0, basically. And then the next step will be make it faster, install.
The next step will be
release.
make it faster to install. I think, well, the steps are really interesting. I think what we need to do is, well, the first thing we need to do is update the example apps to work. Because really, DoneJS is really mostly about its guides. Like, that is kind of DoneJS. So we need to make sure, like, the end point of the guides makes sense. Like, this is really a good example for place my order, and this is a good chat application. And our new Bitballs is already working. Bitcentive should be working, and we have this like core bit of functionality that works. Okay, good, we're there. Now then, we're gonna have to rewrite the guides anyways. Let's rewrite the guides such that we're gonna make so that like DoneJS is a little bit more iterative to install its parts, and we're gonna have to change the code anyways, and then we'll be done. I mean, that would be the way that I approach it, is do the example apps, then rewrite the guides and figure out the parts of the guides that are that need to be faster. Now, I do think there's one thing that I do want to do. Actually, I'll add to that, and maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. You guys can let me know. I would like to make the site with bitdocs because of the code folding and all of that ability of bitdocs, which there's some parts of the guides where we don't show all of the code because it would be like massive package.json, and it just confuses people. And bitdocs helps at least because people can expand. Maybe that would be the number 2 thing that we do.
I have 2 things. One, you keep on using the word rewrite, but do you mean updates? Because
Sure.
Are there parts of the guides that actually have to be rewritten, or just like updating for the patterns in like CanJS 3 or Steel 1?
I think it took Manuel like about a week or so to upgrade Steel.js. And Steel.js is actually more complex than DoneJS.
It had some custom stuff in it.
Yeah, DoneJS does too, but DoneJS's custom stuff was written in a more modern way. So it would be an upgrade. I would expect it takes about a week, but that would allow us to have the kind of like, I don't know what you want to call it, code folding or whatever, better highlighting. Which is really nice for the guide.
Sorry, that was separate from the bitdocs upgrade. You kept on saying like rewrite the guides.
No, we do have to rewrite the guides to update the code to 3.0 code.
Like update the guides, not
update the guides.
You have to rewrite
Okay.
rewrite the code in the guides, right? Rewrite the code that's given.
There's a branch with that already.
Yeah, Matthew's already working on it.
In place mode or in DoneJS CLI as well.
Okay.
Based on pre-release stuff.
Wait, okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Now, they'll have to update, well, never mind. Probably don't have to do anything with 1.0 once we get it working with Steel 1.0.
What about done component or done CSS? Is this working with Steel 1.0 right now? Or do we decouple done CSS, Matthew? Or what we did with done CSS?
Well, I made it so that before Done CSS was basically had all the same code as Still CSS plus a little bit more. I refactored Still CSS so it's easier to inherit from. I don't remember if I updated Done CSS yet to use that stuff, so it will be much smaller. But if not, should do that.
So yeah, I still
Okay.
feel like even it's awesome that Matthew, you might have gone a long way. I think we do still need to do a review for what the final PMO, make sure it works, looks right with all of the other stuff. Do like a QA on it basically. Because even like with Bitballs, I just found a bug.
Yeah, I mean, I did it back in May, so
Yeah.
it's working with a very old pre-release. So
Yeah, so we need to do that.
but hopefully it's like 65% of the way or 70% of the way.
So I guess, Kevin, I think that would be the first thing to do, is to take the example apps and make sure that they're working perfect again with all the latest stuff. Make any code changes we need to make sure that they're working, there's no errors in the console. And then we start updating the guides.
Sweet. And then on the BitDocs related issue, or like moving the site to BitDocs, I think that is that will be really helpful because it's better than what we have right now. But I would hope that we would wait until after our 1.0 release and announcement to do site changes like that, just because it would take more time before we got a release out. And I agree with what you said, Justin, about like just trying to get to 1.0 as quickly as we can with CanJS 3 and Steel 1.
Maybe. The only reason why I say that is because if we're going to be dealing with the guide, and I guess we'll see. We'll see how many people we have available. Like if it's just core people, I agree with you. But if we have like someone coming on at Pitovi who's got the time to do it, where them doing these kind of core tasks would be a little bit harder for them anyways, I think that's a nice parallel task to give somebody. And
Yeah,
having them work alongside everybody else doesn't necessarily speed that part up. So
Yeah, I kind of, I agree kind of with what you both said. It's definitely important that we at least have pre-releases out that people can use that before we start focusing on that. But if we have time, then let's do it.
Yeah. Especially if someone else is like, yeah. Anyways, cool. Anything else on 1.0 then?
I have one question which might not be very necessary. So I checked. So I tried to clone DoneJS recently, and I remember we discussed it like a while ago. So to clone it, so the repo itself is about 370 megabytes and takes quite a lot of time to wait, like while it's loading. Do we want to do this before we release 1.0? No, we don't really.
No, because only people.
Videos.
What?
It's the videos.
Yeah, it's only like the website, right? It's like CanJS itself is really big, but generally speaking, most contributors to CanJS or DoneJS are not actually going to be contributing to CanJS repo or DoneJS repo.
Okay, yeah, just wanted to do that. Okay.
Plus, there's nothing you can actually do aside from destroying history about it.
Yeah.
Cool. Next, what do we want to talk about next?
I have a topic if we don't have any more.
We've got a lot, but let's do yours next.
All right. Mine should be quick. So something that's come up a couple times. So we have CanUtil dev, and I think Kevin changed it a while back so that CanUtil dev is like a no-op. This is for like logging and stuff. He changed it so it's a no-op in production. But there's sometimes we do want to log stuff in production. And I think now we just have like people using console.log. But that doesn't work in IE9.
It doesn't?
No, it doesn't. So I was wondering.
Stupid browser.
I was wondering, should we create like a CanUtil log or something like that? Like put the actual logging functions there, and then CanUtil dev will use log, in dev, but in production it will be a no-op. So that
What do
way,
we-
like if you need to log something in production,
What are the cases where we want to log something in production?
so one huge one that came up again yesterday in can view import. A lot of times people use can view imports in their template. They don't do an is rejected. So if they don't do an is rejected, you get no and you know there's an error. You get no indication that there's an error. So we wanted to log the promise for inside of can view import. That's one example.
We have a handful of them in CanJS too. There's probably 10 console.warns in can.all that would show up in production.
Yeah. So should we? I'm thinking we create a can-util log or something. Put the actual logging functions there, and so if you need to log production, use that. If you need to log dev, use can-util dev, and that will still be an OAuth.
What I don't understand is why our tests don't fail in IE9. Shouldn't they all fail?
Steel did.
Yeah, that's what
I don't
yeah,
know.
but CanJS doesn't. That's what I'm not.
Oh no, I know why. Because David updated it. He updated the test so that they check if console doesn't exist, and it creates the console. That's why.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Probably he did that because Steel was not working at the time correctly. It was still in use.
Yeah, I think that's a fine solution. It's really unfortunate that they don't have console log and
Yeah. Well, they do now. I think I10 it worked.
yeah, but now you're on 9. That's annoying. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Next topic. So this is the server-side rendering versus client-side rendering versus progressive booting. That like when everything is important, nothing is important. And at least my understanding of the thesis of this article is that it's best for users overall to server-side render a little bit of the app. This is assuming an app that's like a Reddit post or something where there's like the post and then there's the comments. My interpretation of what it's suggesting is in those kind of apps, you server-side render just the like content that someone wants to see, and you send that back to the user, and then everything else is client-side rendered. Then the reasons for it is that if you server-side render all of the comments, that's going to take a lot longer on the server to get back to the user. Where, yes, server-side rendering everything on the client is going to give back a faster time to first meaningful paint. But because that like time for first meaningful paint is going to be faster, it's going to take a little bit, sorry, that's going to be faster, but once the client has to get reattached and rehydrate and flip everything over, the time to interactive is much, much further behind. So what they suggest is rendering part of the app and then allowing client-side JavaScript to kind of reattach, so the time to interaction is very fast on the part that you care about and maybe you want to interact with right away. And then you client-side render all of the comments. So I guess the reason why I was bringing this up is I just think that it would be beneficial for DoneJS, especially since server-side rendering is so important to DoneJS, to possibly have some kind of mechanism to say, like, which we've already talked about, like this part of the stuff, like this part of the app should be server-side rendered, and once this is done, render it, and then the client can then, know it's only going to render to that part, and then everything, it's going to do reattachment, and everything else is going to render. So it's to talk about if that's something that, we want to pursue. I guess not definitely immediately for DoneJS 1.0, but something.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't quite get the same thing from the article as you. I know he did mention at one point maybe not server-side rendering everything. It depends on the app and everything. But what I got from the article was to not run as much JavaScript on initial page loads, to like not boot all of your components immediately. So like some stuff that's not as important. He suggested using request idle callback, which is a new thing. I think request idle callback basically waits until there's some idle time, and then it does the callback. So yeah, what I got from it is to not instantiate all of your components right away.
Yes, which this would be kind of the same thing. I guess the interesting part is,
Sorry, is there a way to check if there's a component out of the view port?
Yes.
Because we don't need to render that.
Not on the server.
In the client.
Yeah.
In the client.
Yes, there is. Yeah, you can definitely tell whether
maybe we can make an attribute or something for a component that checks if the component is on the viewport, and if not, do not initialize it.
Matthew, the only way you could do that is to, when you're rehydrating, is to render in kind of off frame. I guess if we're talking about two different I guess there's two different worlds. It's like if you were just doing client-side rendering, then yes, it's much easier because you would assume that your previous content has rendered its position, and then you could see if you were off screen in the component rather easily. I think it's a little trickier if you're in a server-side rendering because you'd have to be like knowing when you can reattach parts into the, you'd have to have some kind of.
Well, I think the takeaway is I think it's more broad that there are some scenarios where you don't need a server-side render some stuff. And there are some scenarios where you don't need to immediately boot up some components. And we already do.
Are those going to be? What do you think the? Yeah. What do you think?
Frozen?
You were for a second. What do you think the degree of overlap that those are the same components would be?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I think
I would keep it broad. I think we just need some generic components that can operate on. We have a do not render in server-side render component, and you use that if you don't want to render. Just give the user some flexibility to like all the different scenarios. Components are a nice way to compose those types of behaviors together.
Yeah, I think it'll be very hard to allow multiple degrees of freedom on independent to make. If we were going to make a partial server-side rendering and client-side application work, I think to have independent degrees of freedom with what is server-side rendered and what is kind of delay rendered is going to be tricky. My instinct would make me think that if we just said in the beginning you only have 1 degree of freedom, there's going to be things that are server-side rendered, and then everything else is going to be kind of like late client-side rendered. I think it'll be easier to solve.
What do you mean by late client-side rendered?
What I mean is everything that would be server-side rendered would be sent to the user, and then you're only going to set up the interactions and only kind of you're going to let the client basically render to that point those same things that were server-side rendered, do the reattachment, so you've got event binding and everything, and then you're going to continue client-side rendering all of the comments and things like that. That to me seems very easy to make work. If you separate those degrees of freedom, I just think it might be harder. That's just my instinct. I don't have like a good rationale right now. But anyways, let's I guess move on because we're not going to build this right now anyways. But something to think about. The next thing I want to talk about was, I don't know if people read through that article and like the firestorm over Twitter on it. But did anybody besides me?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. It was just like how the ideas were presented and like the community response to it.
I thought he was like pretty fair to me. Like he wrote a paragraph where he said, "I'm not attacking frameworks, and like he wrote a whole paragraph about it. I thought the backlash was.
Well, so I think that part of it is part of it was I think the way, like he said, high level conclusions. There was something like, there was some part of it where it talked about like, well, it made it sound like his argument was like, well, if frameworks don't provide this at all, there's no reason to use a framework because this is like the only important characteristic that matters. And I think he overreached a little bit there, and I think that's why frameworks responded the way they did. I don't know. It was just interesting, the response to it, and there was like people saying like, well, our frameworks, we can adapt to these ideas, like React was saying that, and then that like pissed off other framework developers, and I don't know, it was a weird.
People are sensitive.
Yeah, people are sensitive
for good reasons sometimes.
Yeah, people work hard on it.
I think because the author of this is Paul Lewis. He works for Google. And some of the other Googlers have been critical of frameworks. I think he got the brunt of that, even though I didn't feel like that was what was happening here.
Yeah, I think that was exactly that. That the Chrome dev team has sometimes published things or put out opinions that seem anti-framework and very like, use the platform and you shouldn't be using a framework. So when they publish stuff like that and say that sort of thing, it feels threatening because we depend on them to provide us the things that we need to build better frameworks. So I think that's where some of the sensitivity comes from.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder what the Angular people thought about that sentiment. Anyways, the other topic that I want to bring up is just Steel 1.0 decorator support. Do those work in 1.0? Do we know?
Steel 1.0 decorator support.
Does Steel 1.0 support like the ES6 decorators? Like
I don't know. It supports whatever Babel. Babel has these preset things, which are like groups of features or whatever.
Yeah.
So it supports. It's on steeljs.com. I believe it supports like.
But not decorators. Decorators.
Yeah, decorators is like it's pretty low on the stage thing.
It's on stage 2, but it's even still not in the stage 2 Babel because whatever reason it's a separate plugin they call Legacy for now until somebody finally updates it.
So yeah, one thing people have been asking for is ability to load Babel plugins, like separate Babel plugins in Steel, which is something we don't currently provide, but
that's me. I'm asking for that.
Could possibly be done.
So it's my understanding that Ember, like decorator, is like a huge part of developing Ember apps. I'm curious. Then
it's in TypeScript, so a lot of frameworks like Angular uses TypeScript, and they have decorators there. So maybe that's what Ember does too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe not.
Curious if it's like, what are they promoting if they're using decorators?
Also, Yehuda is the author of the decorator spec, so that's probably why.
Okay.
Why do you ask that?
Well, just I think that because I talked about this like 2 ago, is like I would like, as we kind of move past DoneJS 1.0, I think things like, it'd be nice if, as much as possible, we could use the decorators and ES6 classes instead of can construct. And I see decorators as the way that we can do that. So yeah, Steel, the not supporting custom Babel presets, that that's a feature that would be really good so that we can support, I don't know if Webpack supports it, and I don't know how this stuff works in Browserify, but it would be nice to start, at some point for CanJS 3.0, it'd be nice to show like, oh, just use decorators and that kind of stuff. But just thinking about the future, like a year from now, it'd be be nice to see that kind of thing.
Yeah, you can. We could support this. I don't think it'd be too much problem. The biggest problem is people write this stuff not really intended to be run in the browser. So that's always the problem. Is like if you're using the file system or something like that. But you would think something like that would not. So I don't know. You can try it.
Okay.
We do not support custom bubble presets. We do right now. Or Matthew, we have that bubble options on Steel.
We have Babel options, and you can put in stuff that you can specify all of that, but we're only going to use the ones that we bundle, because we bundle Babel. So you could put something in there, but it's not going to get used.
And you can't specify a version of Babel for like one package versus another, right?
No, that's true. You can't do that. That would be bad. We can't do that.
It would be bad, but it would be good too. I mean, it would be good in the same way that it's like nice that we can start specifying like Steel plugins, like, oh, this is done with this version of Steel CSS, and then this other, version of Steel CSS. It's good if every package defines pretty much everything needed to load and run it, including Babel, perhaps. But it would be terrible for performance. But maybe. I mean, again, we could. It'd be all right for performance if all of your packages made sure they were listing the same version of Babel, and we can, of course, enforce that for CanJS and all of our projects. So, anyways, things to think about. So those are the topics that I had.
Yeah, that would be pretty easy to fix in Steel, and if anyone is interested in doing that feature, let me know, and I can guide you through.
Sorry, what feature?
It's supporting custom Babel plugins and whatnot.
Cool. I'm interested. I want to do it. I want to help in any way I can.
Okay.
For me, just to state why. Right now, it comes down to the why use Steel argument, and right now there's things you can do with Webpack that you can't do with Steel, like decorators and blah, 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 and that sucks. It would be great if there was nothing you couldn't do and we were just superior across the board. And then it'd be cool to make a TypeScript plugin too, so that we can say, oh yeah, TypeScript, no problem. That would be awesome.
I actually started working on that Steel TypeScript.
Kevin, you're my man.
Because
you get a virtual high five.
Yeah, because I'm presenting about Steel at a meetup where 80% of people use TypeScript.
Yeah, that's a big .NET group. That's smart.
Yeah, so.
You should talk to Joe. Actually, we should. By the way, I don't know if I love doing that. Like, oh, it's important. Joe is writing up on Can Connect Signal R, right? He's trying to write like a blog article on that. Mm-hmm. It would be very cool if that was done with TypeScript, CanJS, and Signal R.
Yeah, so I think the actual Steel TypeScript plugin isn't going to take very long. I just need a few more hours to finish it because you can already run the TypeScript compiler in the browser, so it should be pretty straightforward. But yeah, once that's working, I'll
talk to him about it.
Yeah. Is there a TypeScript compiler for a browser? Because if I'm looking into that, that's a huge. There was 3 megabyte for the compiler. Is it that less now?
I'm not sure. I'll have to take a look. That's a good question.
Because if I'm looking into TypeScript, there was a compiler, and the compiler has 3 megabytes. And even if you load Steel and you load the 3 megabyte compiler to use Steel on the browser, or use Steel and TypeScript in the browser.
But you could do watch mode, right?
For what? Steel tools.
Yeah.
Or you
just build it every time. That's what someone on Webpack has to do.
Yeah, but that's.
Then we're just like Webpack. Yeah.
I like Steel way. So you go there and Steel is there and you use it and you can live reloading.
Yeah. Well, Modlets is the best. I mean, the argument always to why you Steel, at least for me, is always Modlets. Like they are so freaking important for big application development that any amount of TypeScript and Babel plugins to me would never matter. I would rather just use plain JavaScript and have modlets than any fancy feature. But I'm very I'm a big believer in modlets. They're everything to me, really.
That's so sad.
Huh? That's so sad? Yeah, I know. I have a daughter too. Don't tell her. But like, I mean, that's like, modlets are the foundation for how we do things at Bitobi. It's like, I mean, you don't need them if you're yourself working on some fun side project or whatever. But if you're working with a lot of people, I don't know, nothing else would seem worth it to me. Anyways, what's next?
You want to go through I'm going through the list. We could go through the enumerable issue that you brought up.
Did you want to talk a little bit about can namespace?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say that.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, I can think that I want to say is what we did for can namespace is we released a can namespace 1.00 package that will never change, and all that package does is export a plain JavaScript object. Right? So we just have this one package that we never ever intended to change, and everything else that like should only load once. A lot of things depend on this package, but the things that should only ever load once basically add themselves. They basically check that there's not another version of themselves on this, and then they add themselves to it. So these are kind of like CanJS's singletons. And we basically used can namespace package, which should never change, as like a check to or basically a, it's a singleton itself. We make this one singleton, and then everything else kind of adds or mutates or checks the singleton that is a singleton to make sure that there's only one of these things ever. So I don't know. I just think that's a curious way of doing it.
Is it the replacement for types?
No, there's a can types which adds types to the namespace.
So wait, is can namespace the window.can? Is that what it is?
Can namespace is the replacement for can util namespace, which was there. And yes, in the can all build, that's what gets used as window.can.
Mm-hmm.
But you can still load two versions of like can component, right?
You could.
Yeah.
You could, but then there will just, on the namespace, they'll just be overwritten. All right.
Okay.
So right now there's only like a handful of things that throw an error if there's already a version. So can CID, can types, can observation, and can view callbacks are the four that will check if they already exist and throw an error.
Cool. Yeah, we should put can zone on there probably too. Maybe.
This would be like a good this one weird trick blog article.
We
Like,
release a package that's an empty object.
how to deal with how to deal with singletons in a framework or like through a package manager. And this is a one weird trick to, I think, make it so people will always know if they've messed things up.
Yeah, I think I'm like 12 hours out from a lot of people being angry at me for doing this and breaking stuff. So let's give it a little time and see how much it actually helps before we start writing that
article. Is it done? Is
it
all released?
It's done. Okay. Yeah, except for the main can package, everything else is released to use can namespace and these other pieces that are broken out.
Fair enough. Okay, the serialized thing. Should talk about that real quick. I think my guess is that I have, consent on this from. I don't think it's actually in the end very. I don't know. There's much to be controversial. Basically, we already have the serialized property. I'm suggesting adding an enumerable property that can just be true or false. Ideally, it would control it can't without some exposed things from JavaScript land. But ideally, enumerable would control all of like a for in loop, object keys, whether it showed up in object keys or not, whether actually it would not. I actually have to remove this. It would always has own property would always be true. whether it was enumerable or not. I actually have to make that change. But it would be get own property names. So it's really like the properties that are enumerable. This is a mistake here, trying to do with that one. An in would work no matter what.
So
'Cause
wait,
it has nothing to do with enumerability.
so
Sure.
is there with this new proposal, is there a difference between get and serialize?
Yeah,
That was my
serialize
question.
just controls when you call the serialize method.
Serialize just control. No, I'm asking this: calling the serialize method and calling the get method. What's the difference? What's the difference between those two?
Okay, so calling the get method would basically return you all values that are enumerable.
Okay.
Calling
Serialize does the same thing except for stuff that's not marked
but it can be
serialized.
it follows enumerable, but it can be overridden by serialize, and then you can also provide your own like serializer. So something like, let's say I had a can map that had a date in it or something. Like you might want, so if I did new map date, new date, right? You might want it so that if I did map.date, or sorry, did map.get, well, that's going to return you a plain JavaScript object that is basically what you passed in here. It's going to return you pretty much the same thing. Map.serialize is there for, really it's there for things that need a serializable representation, a instance of a date. You know, you really want to convert that back to like a number or a string or something like that. So serialize, that's why it takes a function where you can override it to like take the value here and convert it to something else.
Yeah.
So that's basically it. There was a bug that was related to this that we kind of broke compatibility with how 2.3 can maps, and actually 3.0 can maps work. So the proposed solution would fix that and add this enumerable that allows you like more fine-grained control. And like I said, ideally, this is set up so that ideally for in object keys, get own property names, not those two, but these would you know, be affected by your choice of enumerable.
So one thing that I find weird about how it currently works is that get has kind of two uses. So if you do get and you provide a property name, it returns that value, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that value is not enumerable, it still returns it. So if you like
that's true.
get foo, it's going to return foo, but if you do get and foo is not enumerable, you don't get foo.
Yeah, it's kind of, well,
odd.
I mean, it's kind of like if you do foo.bar, but bar was a non-enumerable property, you still get the value of bar, right? But I think the reason is because we did call it toObject for a little bit.
Yeah.
Maps get method was there was two different things. There was a get method, and there was a this was like reading a property that may or may not be defined yet, and then there was a toObject that basically did what get did, and there was a foo.serialize. And then the problem is also I needed, like, there was a set for setting like an object and for setting a property. So it just like was like, okay, do we really need this extra method? No, I kind of liked it just, you know, one method that, you know, less stuff on the documentation page to. I get what you're saying, Matthew, but that's a tangent issue, I think, in some ways.
Does the proposal provide a way to get everything, including non-enumerable? That's one thing people always ask for.
No.
Okay.
We would have to have another method for that. That's a good consideration. I don't
remember the use case though, because if you have the object, you have. Yeah,
why not just make enumerable true at that point? Oh, one other thing to just remember is it's true except for getters. Enumerable is going to be true by default except for getter functions. So I don't know if I put an example here, but your normal like async getter or getter function, those are going to be anything with a getter is false enumerable. So I think the thing is what people really wanted often was to be able to say, I want this getter as returned by .atter in map, and that wasn't possible. But this does make that possible, because now you can say, well, I don't want it serialized, but I do want it enumerable. It should hopefully give people the fine-grained control that they want. My guess is.
Question: Can you set? Would you be able to set enumerable true on a property that has a getter so that you can get it?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was saying. So like
Okay.
your enumerable true, where there should be an example of that.
Yeah, I think it's the one that's right
it's this
under
one.
your
Yeah. Yeah, so if you have
Okay,
enumerable
cool.
true, then this property B would be returned by both getter and serialize, actually.
Yep. Okay, cool.
I have a question. So you're talking about how we need to have like the special symbols provided to get, has own property, and well, maybe not has own property. Sorry, all the other ones, foreign and object keys and object assigned to work. Could we do that by like right now the actual instance has like none of its own properties. It's all just prototype properties, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So could we like just do something where we like any that are enumerable, we actually put a little getter that is enumerable. We like.
So we could do that, but the performance is.
It would be killer. Like that would be a bad performance.
I don't think it would be. It would be. I don't know how bad it would be. Let me put it that way. I don't suspect it would be great.
So that's like one of the things that's bothering me in one of my little projects is I can't do like an object assign on a can define map because it just comes back with an empty object because it actually has none of its own.
Why can't you do an object assign? I mean, an object assign like
just like
we'll do a map and then this kind of thing.
But if you do the reverse of what you're saying,
you can't do the reverse because
that's what I need is the reverse.
Yeah, but so what? Well, if you wanted the reverse like this, you would do map.get or something. Right?
Yeah, map.serialize is what I have now, but that's where the problem comes into place. But anyway,
yeah, no, I know that's.
Why can't we just put them on the object itself?
Well, it makes it slower, right? So all of these getters and setters are just added on the prototype. So when you create a new instance, it's super.
Oh, I see.
It's super fast.
Because the instance is all but empty, right? That's the idea.
Oh, hey, do you see what Thomas said? He's looking at Thomas. You should on Gitter. That's where you should be throwing up questions. It looks like you just did. Yeah, generally speaking, I don't know if we're looking at the YouTube chat because we'll hear ourselves in the background.
We can't make we can't make our getters enumerable true.
Getters, they are, but they're on the prototype.
Oh, they're on the prototype. All right.
So anyways, it's just a performance thing. Like we could go through and recopy every single property getter setter every time a new instance is initialized, but I would prefer not to for performance reasons because that just is like another loop that I want to avoid.
But it would make, well, presumably it would make object keys foreign and get own property names work, right?
It would. It would. Yeah. My hope is that the what we should do really is submit a own property symbol to like make that an official accessible symbol, and then all of this stuff would, because if you read through the spec, all of these things just access the own property key symbol and look in there for the answers to these things. That to me seems, I don't know. To me, this is where we can have our cake and eat it. We can have really good performance and we can support these things. We can support for of with the iterator symbol, which I talk about it here, So that I'm not really worried about.
We already support that.
Huh?
We already support that.
Oh, did you already do that?
Yep.
Or someone already do that? Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's
Can
cool.
define, can map, can list.
Okay, that's awesome. So I don't know. I would, if there's like a flag we want to allow people to turn this on or something, I would get behind that, or we'd have to do some. I'd want to do some testing of initializing maps to see like what this looks like, calling object define property like 30 times in a for loop. You know, if not a like in a loop every time an instance is created, what's the difference there? I'd want to.
There is an object defined properties now.
There is. I don't. Is that a 99? Well, either
No,
way,
I'm sure it's not.
Whatever it is, sure it's got to be a lot of properties. I got to imagine that that is work that we currently don't have to do anything. So we're going from like whatever it takes. Right now it's at 0, right? So if it takes like 20 milliseconds for like 100 items, well, that's 0 right now because there's no work that has to be done because we're relying upon the proto chain to do it for us. So yeah, I guess I would say that there is one thing that you could do, which is you could just use define on objects. Like a solution for maybe you could experiment with at least is you could just keep your definition around, right, with your getters and.
I think I get where you're going there.
Yeah. So prop, you know, whatever you get prop that, right? You could do, and this is kind of like the what's it called that what's his face likes so much, the you know, object create kind of pattern a little bit. What you could do then is, you know, make your own, like, well, I mean, you could actually, if you really wanted to hide it, you could hide it, but you can always do something like define, and then I guess you would want to clone this. I think there's probably a way. There's definitely a way where you can. This is on the object, and this is the definition. Like, and then this would be that object. Like, you could just do this, and then your object itself. And if you really wanted to like make it evil, you could just have your constructor function. Or your type. If you really wanted to like make it, you know, hey, this is a great time to experiment with this kind of stuff. You could pretty much do something like this, and then we're just return the object. Even this would be allowed to be called, you know, new my type. And I think you could even pass in the initial props here. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but something like this probably could be made to work. So it looks like the, you know, normal constructors, but it's just going to do the define stuff every time, which is obviously going to be more expensive. But if the for looping stuff is so important, then you could probably get away with it that way.
Hey, by the way, proxy has a trap for keys. So all the different key methods can be done.
Yes, proxies will probably make all of this go away at some point. Like proxies are yeah, will be very nice.
Proxies are magic.
Yeah.
Proxies are magic.
Yeah.
So I've heard you say this a few times that eventually proxies will solve all the problems.
Well, proxies will never be as fast as define can define because for the same reason I just talked about. Like and proxies already like there's like more work when they have to read and set properties. So I think define map will still. I think if we're smart, what we start doing is really putting pressure to like, you know, expose this so that objects can provide their own stuff here. But also, hopefully, for of becomes just a lot more popular, and then it also kind of disappears. Maybe. Does object assign? Can you pass object assign an iterator? If yes, what or I assume you can, what does it use? Does it use for of?
I don't think you can pass in an iterator.
That'd be interesting. That sucks if you can't, but that to me would be interesting because then object assign, there's a solution there. That really, I think JavaScript really needs to expose those kind of things. So I don't know. Good topic, but let's put a pin in that because I think this should still go forward regardless of anything else we just talked about. And I'll take that to mean agreement.
Woohoo!
All right, we've gone an hour. Do we want to keep? What's next?
I don't think so. I had brought up as a topic some of the CamJS website design changes that I want to propose, but that's not necessarily something that we would need to extend this meeting for. We can always we'll be talking about it next week, and we can always talk about it at the next meeting too.
Yeah, let's move that one to next week. That'll be fine.
Yeah, sounds good. Cool. Were there any other topics that we didn't get to that we'll either need to discuss or table for next week?
Don't think so.
Sweet. Okay. Thanks everyone for coming. And with that, we're going to end the broadcast. See you guys later.
See y'all.
See you all next week.